It begins with the thin air of the Andean highlands, where crisp winds carry the scent of eucalyptus, and in the valleys the corn and potato terraces climb the hillsides like green steps. Move westward and the mist dissipates into humid coastlines where coconut palms whip in sea breezes. Head east and you enter the dense Amazon, rivers winding like silver ribbons through forest canopies. In this compact but richly diverse land, Ecuador, live peoples whose stories, movements, and aspirations map onto the mountains, the coast, the jungle, and ever more into growing cities. Mestizos, indigenous nations, Afro-Ecuadorians, Montubios, and those of European or foreign origin all share the same national borders, yet occupy quite different cultural geographies. People move from mountains to cities, from rural to urban, and from abroad to Ecuador. Their identities shape how and where they live, and housing cost shapes those possibilities. In today's journey we travel through time and space across Ecuador's principal groups, exploring their histories, their migrations, and the housing landscapes they inhabit, with real-world price markers anchoring each region. The mestizos form Ecuador's largest and most fluid identity, the social and cultural majority. They are people of mixed indigenous and European descent. Over centuries, intermarriage, social blending, and cultural exchange created a mestizo majority that absorbs many ways of life. In the Andean highlands, mestizos often retain agricultural practices, speak Spanish alongside indigenous words, follow Catholic rituals infused with local customs, and farm maize, potatoes or raise livestock. On the coast, mestizos engage in trade, fishing, shipping, and commerce, participating in coastal rhythms of seafood, tropical fruits, and port economies. Over time the mestizo identity became central to modern Ecuador's national project of a blended, unified nation bridging European and indigenous heritages. During the 20th century, the pull of cities grew. The mechanization of subsistence farming, land fragmentation, declining rural labor opportunities, and the lure of urban wages drove waves of internal migration. Young men and women from highland and coastal rural zones moved to Quito, Guayaquil, Ambato or Cuenca in search of education, healthcare and better incomes. The mestizo population consolidated its presence in cities, neighborhoods expanding outward, suburbs rising, informal settlements creeping along hillsides. Today mestizos are at the center of Ecuador's urban modernity: presidents, shopkeepers, teachers, drivers, technicians. Where mestizos live is vast. In the heart of Quito, among the crowded blocks of Guayaquil, in the rolling hills around Ambato, in mid-sized towns or rural outskirts. Housing in those areas, especially in cities, can be moderately expensive by Ecuadorian standards. In Quito the average cost to purchase an apartment in a city center neighborhood is around $1,600 per square meter. Listings in Quito show 3-bedroom city apartments asking between about $550 and $1,200 monthly for rent, and purchase listings often in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for prime units. On the coast, in Guayaquil, the price per square meter is a bit lower but still significant, and a 3-bedroom apartment in city centers may rent for around $600. Because mestizos form the backbone of Ecuador's cities, their housing spans the full spectrum, from modest apartments in working-class neighborhoods to upscale condominiums in gentrified or business districts. Yet the indigenous nations, whose roots in this land precede colonial maps, remain vital threads in Ecuador's social tapestry. In the highlands, many Quechua-speaking nations live in towns and villages skirted by Andean peaks, preserving language, textile arts, ecological knowledge, and ritual calendars. In the Amazon basin there live Shuar, Achuar, Wairani, Kofan and others who inhabit forest territories, river corridors, and remote settlements. During colonial times indigenous communities suffered forced labor, land seizure, and displacement. In the Republican era, neglect, assimilation policies, and extraction pressures further eroded territory and autonomy. But indigenous movements in the 20th and 21st centuries revived claims to bilingual education, communal land rights, environmental stewardship and political representation. Some indigenous communities remained in their territories, cultivating Andean soils or Amazonian gardens, living in modest houses made of adobe, wood, thatch or modern materials when possible. Others, pressured by economic hardship, lack of services or environmental damage, migrated toward cities. They often settle first in fringe neighborhoods or informal settlements, seeking factory, construction or service work, while maintaining connections to their home communities. Generations later their children may fully urbanize, though cultural memory often persists. When indigenous peoples migrate to Quito or Guayaquil, they face housing affordability challenges. The houses in peripheral barrios or informal sectors are cheaper than prime neighborhoods, but often lack infrastructure or secure titles. The urban housing markets we cited earlier for Quito and Guayaquil become aspirational ceilings that many cannot reach. Thus indigenous households may cluster in lower-cost zones, shared dwellings, or housing that has gradually improved over time. Along Ecuador's Pacific coast and river valleys, the Afro-Ecuadorian communities maintain ancestral legacies of resistance, culture, and survival. Descendants of enslaved Africans, they established maroon settlements, especially in Esmeraldas province and in riverine zones. Their culture pulses in marimba rhythms, sea and river fishing, coconut and plantain dishes, community festivals and oral histories. Historically, Afro-Ecuadorians were forced laborers, maroon fugitives or settled in marginal lands. Over time they built villages along rivers and coasts, with strong solidarity ties and collective identity. Economic pressures, limited land, environmental vulnerability or lack of infrastructure have pushed some Afro-Ecuadorians to migrate toward towns or cities such as Esmeraldas City or Guayaquil. There they often take jobs in construction, port labor, commerce or informal sectors. Discrimination and unequal access to services further channel migration choices. In cities, Afro-Ecuadorian migrants face the same housing constraints as others: city prices, insecure tenure, crowded lots, but sometimes are constrained to neighborhoods with lower-cost housing or informal subdivisions. In coastal provinces, formal markets are limited in many Afro-Ecuadorian villages. Houses are few listed formally, land may be communal or insecurely titled, and coastal value is uneven. But when Afro-Ecuadorians move to Guayaquil, they confront the city's real estate indices. Average apartment purchase cost and rental prices in the city are benchmarks. For many Afro-Ecuadorian households, achieving ownership in those price bands requires long-term savings, multi-family investment or fallback to more marginal zones. In the sunlit plains of the coast lives the Montubio identity, officially recognized in Ecuador's 2022 census. Montubios are rural coastal farmers, ranchers, ranch hands, horsemen, and agricultural families whose traditions mix cattle raising, rice, banana cultivation, and cultural expressions unique to the lowlands: horsemen's skills, cockfighting scenes, coastal rhythms, local speech inflections. Their life is tied to land, seasons and rural communities. Many Montubio families have deep local roots. Land inheritance, communal ties and rural economies anchor them in place. But economic changes, fluctuating crop prices, climate events, land competition, coastal development and tourism push younger Montubios toward coastal towns or Guayaquil in search of work. When Montubios migrate to towns, they often settle in peripheral or rural urban fringe neighborhoods with lower-cost housing. Some maintain rural houses while commuting or working part-time in towns, others fully relocate. In the rural Montubio zones, house costs are very low by urban standards, though formal listings are rare. Essential affordability is high, but services such as water, roads and schools may lag. In towns near ranching areas or near coastlines, property markets vary widely. Inland plots and modest homes are very cheap, but prime coastal front or resort-adjacent land can command high prices. If a Montubio moves into the urban market, they contend with the same apartment or house price ranges in cities, though they are often beyond reach. Finally, the European descent, white identifying, foreign and expatriate residents add another layer. Historically, people of European origin held elite positions: landowners, political leaders, professionals. Today their share in census self-identification is small, but their cultural and economic influence is outsized, especially in urban property, business and real estate. More recently, foreign retirees and expats from North America, Europe and elsewhere have purchased homes in Cuenca, Quito, coastal cities and resort towns. They are attracted by Ecuador's climates, lower cost of living, the fact that Ecuador uses the US dollar, affordable healthcare, scenic landscapes and an accessible Latin American base. In Cuenca, a famed expat hub, average apartment prices march upward under demand. Apartments sell in Cuenca at about $1,118 per square meter and houses about $852 per square meter. Listings in Cuenca show homes priced in the range of $129,000, $239,000, $310,000 depending on location, condition and size. In Quito, listings of apartments for sale show median sales prices around $140,000 for sizable units, and new developments can exceed $1,200 per square meter. In Guayaquil, the average property price in mid-2024 was reported at around $1,360 per square meter, surpassing Quito in some sectors. Thus, foreigners entering the market often focus on neighborhoods where quality, security, climate and services justify the premium, and sometimes drive local price rises. Their presence partly fuels gentrification and selective infrastructure development. It is worth pausing over the housing benchmarks that thread through all these stories because they give texture to possibility. In Quito, the average purchase price per square foot translates to roughly $160,000 to $200,000 for a typical apartment depending on neighborhood and finish. Rental listings for Quito showed 3-bedroom city apartments renting for about $550 to $1,200. In Guayaquil, a similar area apartment might cost $120,000 to $160,000 depending on location and rent about $600 monthly. In Cuenca, houses are commonly listed in the $100,000 to $310,000 range, or more for premium properties. The coastal and rural zones do not always have formal listings, but rural land and houses can often be acquired at a small fraction of urban cost. Thus for mestizo city dwellers, indigenous urban migrants, Afro-Ecuadorians moving into towns, Montubios entering towns, and expats bidding on premium homes, the same price benchmarks loom, though how close they reach those benchmarks depends on income, financing, social capital, legal title and local discrimination or favoritism. In reflecting on all this, the narrative of Ecuador is as much one of layered mobility as of layered identity. People from mountains move to cities, people from the coast drift inland, indigenous people balance ties to ancestral lands with modern opportunity. Afro-Ecuadorians negotiate marginality and urban inclusion. Montubios waver between rural tradition and urban possibility, and foreign newcomers reshape neighborhoods, inserting new value lines. The housing numbers anchor those movements into everyday decisions. How big a home, in what neighborhood, with what risk, with what hope? Beyond the numbers, life's quality depends on services: water, roads, electricity, schools, security, healthcare, public transit. Often the people who move, from rural zones, from marginalized groups, accept trade-offs in housing quality or location in exchange for access to hope, the chance of steady job, schooling for children, connectivity to markets, and a future beyond subsistence. Ecuador's diversity is both a map and a story. Every road from Quito to the coast is a different chapter. If you like this overview, subscribe for deeper videos that zoom into one group: Quechua stories in the highlands, marimba and food in Esmeraldas, Montubio ranch life, or Cuenca's expat neighborhoods. With on-the-ground interviews, local housing listings and a downloadable price table. Thanks for traveling through Ecuador's people. See you in the next video.